Ambassador Velkrin of the Centauri Diplomatic Corps had seen many things in his 230 years of life. He had witnessed the fall of empires, the birth of new civilizations, and even survived a dinner party where someone thought it was appropriate to serve fermented Glorback's intestines. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for humans. Specifically, this human. Captain Jake Morrison, if that was even his real rank. Because Velkrin was becoming increasingly convinced that human military hierarchies were just elaborate pranks they played on other species. "So let me get this straight," Velkrin said, his three eye stalks converging on the human who was currently eating something called a taco with alarming enthusiasm. "You're telling me that the Wandering Star, the legendary vessel that disappeared during the Great Silence, the ship that every archaeological expedition in the known galaxy has been searching for, the absolute holy grail of xenoarchaeology, you just know where it is?" Jake nodded, mouth full, held up one finger in a "wait a moment" gesture that Velkrin had learned meant the human was physically incapable of speech due to food consumption. How they had conquered space with such inefficient eating habits was beyond him. After an elaborate swallowing motion that looked genuinely uncomfortable, Jake grinned. "Yeah, man, I parked it." Silence descended on the observation deck of the diplomatic station. Even the soft hum of the life support systems seemed to pause in disbelief. "You parked it," Velkrin repeated slowly, the way one might talk to a child who just claimed to have befriended a supernova. "Well, yeah, I mean, not just me. The whole crew did. But I was the pilot, so technically, yeah, I parked it." Jake took another bite of his taco, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just casually shattered about 12,000 years of galactic mystery. Velkrin's primary eye stalk twitched, a sign that his cognitive centers were approaching critical overload. "The Wandering Star has been missing for 12,000 years, Captain Morrison. 12,000 years. Our best archaeologists have scoured 73 star systems. The Kalthrani spent their entire GDP for a decade searching. There are 3 separate religions based around finding it. And you're telling me you parked it?" "Yep." Another bite of taco. "Good parking spot, too. No meters." Dr. Ixora, the station's Vexathari head researcher, floated forward in her containment sphere. Her translucent form pulsed with colors that Velkrin recognized as deep skepticism mixed with scientific curiosity and what might have been the Vexathari equivalent of a migraine. "Captain Morrison," she said in her melodious voice that always sounded slightly like wind chimes having an existential crisis. "The Wandering Star was the most advanced vessel ever created by the progenitor civilization. It contained technology that we still don't understand. Its disappearance marked the beginning of the Great Silence, when the progenitors vanished from the galaxy. And you expect us to believe that you, a human who apparently measures time in something called commercial breaks, just happened to park it somewhere?" Jake finished his taco and wiped his hands on his pants, which caused both Velkrin and Ixora to recoil slightly. Humans and their casual relationship with cleanliness was another mystery for another day. "Look," Jake said, "I get that this sounds weird. But here's the thing. About 15 years ago, standard Earth time, not that confusing star cycle thing you guys use, I was doing a solo exploration run in the Kepler Expanse. You know, that area everyone says is super dangerous and probably haunted?" "Yes," Velkrin said dryly. "We say that because it is super dangerous. The gravitational anomalies alone have destroyed 47 ships in recorded history. 48 now, but that was Dave's fault. Anyway," Jake continued, completely glossing over what sounded like another story of human survival that defied physics. I found this asteroid field that wasn't on any charts. And in the middle of it, just floating there like someone's abandoned car in a Walmart parking lot, was the wandering star. Just floating there, Ixora repeated. Just floating there, Jake confirmed. Big ship. Couldn't miss it. Had these weird glowing symbols on the side. I took some photos. He pulled out what humans called a phone, a device that seemed to do everything except make reliable phone calls, and started swiping through images. Velcrin felt his cardiac nodes skip a beat as Jake turned the screen around. There it was. The wandering star. The actual, genuine, no doubt about it, wandering star, with its distinctive asymmetrical hull and the progenitor script glowing along its flanks. It looked exactly like the ancient recordings, except with slightly less cosmic mystery and slightly more, "Yeah, I found this thing" energy. "By the eternal void," Velcrin whispered. "I know, right?" Jake said, completely misreading the tone. "So, anyway, I docked with it, because I'm not an idiot." Well, I am an idiot. But I'm not the kind of idiot who finds an ancient supership and just flies away. I'm the kind of idiot who boards it to see if there's cool stuff inside. "You boarded the wandering star," Ixora said, her colors now cycling through what Velcrin recognized as the Vexthari version of having a complete mental breakdown while remaining professional. The ship that could contain technology dangerous enough to destabilize reality. You just boarded it. Yeah, hacked the airlock. Took like 20 minutes. Progenitor security's really good. But you know what they didn't account for? Duct tape and spite. Jake said this with the kind of pride usually reserved for announcing a cure for a terrible disease, not for breaking into an ancient vessel using what Velcrin had learned was essentially adhesive tape. "What did you find inside?" Velcrin asked, unable to stop himself. Jake's face lit up. Oh man, so much stuff. The bridge was incredible. Like, imagine if you took a cathedral, made it functional, and then added 1,000,000 buttons. I didn't touch most of them because, label your buttons, progenitors. But there was this one section that had what looked like a navigation system, and I managed to figure out the basics. The ship was still operational. Can you believe it? After all that time, everything still worked. Those guys built stuff to last. "The ship was operational," Velcrin repeated, his voice hollow. "The most advanced vessel in galactic history, lost for 12 millennia, and it still worked. Well, it needed a jump start. That's a long time for a battery to sit. But yeah, fired right up. Made this humming sound like a really big cat purring if the cat was made of pure energy and could probably destroy a planet." Ixora's colors had settled into a steady pattern that Velcrin thought might be resignation. "So what did you do then, Captain Morrison?" "I flew it, obviously. I mean, it took a few tries. Crashed it into 2 asteroids. Okay, 3 asteroids. Fine, 5 asteroids. But the last 2 were really close together, so they basically count as 1. Eventually got the hang of it, though. The ship basically flies itself once you convince it you're not going to do anything stupid." "And did you do anything stupid?" Velcrin asked, already knowing the answer. "I mean, define stupid." "Captain Morrison." "Okay, yes. I tried to see how fast it could go, and I may have accidentally opened a temporary wormhole. But in my defense, that button was not labeled, and it was big and glowing. What was I supposed to do? Not press it?" Dr. Ixora made a sound like glass harmonics being strangled. "You opened a wormhole. A small wormhole. Barely a wormhole, more like a worm dimple. And I closed it right away. Well, after I went through it. But then I came back and closed it. The ship made it really easy, actually. There was this whole interface that popped up. Really user-friendly for a civilization that vanished mysteriously. Velkrin felt the need to sit down, despite his species having evolved beyond the need for sitting. Where did the wormhole take you? Jake scratched his head. That's the weird part. It took me to this system with a super-dense asteroid field and some kind of massive structure in the center. Like a Dyson sphere, but more complicated. There were hundreds of ships there, all progenitor design, just parked in neat rows. And this beam of light scanned my ship, then the wormhole closed behind me, and another one opened up that spat me back out where I started. The observation deck was silent, except for the sound of Velkrin's respiratory system working overtime. You found the progenitors, Ixora said quietly. You accidentally found where they went. Maybe? I don't know, man. I didn't see anyone, just ships and a big weird sphere thing. Honestly, it felt like parking at an airport, automated, vaguely threatening, unclear signage. Did you try to communicate? Velkrin asked, his scientific curiosity briefly overwhelming his disbelief. I yelled into my radio a lot. Said hi, asked if anyone was home, tried to explain that I was just passing through and didn't mean to intrude. Nothing. Although right before the second wormhole opened, my console displayed some text in progenitor script. I took a picture. He swiped through his phone again. Ixora gasped, which was impressive for a being with no respiratory system. That's progenitor writing. It says, unscheduled visit. Please return to the parking area and wait for proper authorization. Yeah, I figured it was something like that. Very bureaucratic vibe. So I went back through the wormhole, and when I popped out in the original location, I realized I had no idea how to explain any of this without sounding completely insane. I mean, hey everybody, I found the lost progenitor ship and accidentally visited their secret base. Sounds like the kind of thing you say after eating the wrong kind of space mushrooms. So you just left it there, Velkrin said. You parked the most important archaeological find in galactic history and just left it. I secured it, Jake said defensively. Changed the access codes, made sure it was in a stable orbit, took detailed notes on the location. I was going to report it. But then I got distracted by that whole thing with the Voldrathi pirate fleet. And then there was the incident with the singing nebula. And honestly, it just slipped my mind. It slipped your mind. I have ADHD, man. Do you know how hard it is to remember where you parked your car at the mall? Now imagine the car is a 12,000-year-old supership and the mall is infinite space. Cut me some slack. Ixora's form pulsed rapidly. Captain Morrison, every major institution in the galaxy has been searching for that ship. Wars have been fought over claims to its theoretical location. The Zerthian Collective went bankrupt funding expeditions. And you forgot about it because you have ADHD? And the pirate thing was really intense. There were like 50 of them. But yeah, I probably should have mentioned it sooner. My bad. Velkrin's eye stalks had now tied themselves into a knot, which was his species' physiological response to encountering something so absurd that the brain needed to physically reboot. Your bad. He says my bad about the wandering star. Jake shrugged. I mean, what do you want me to say? I found the ship, I flew it around, I parked it, I forgot to tell anyone. Classic Jake Morrison move. My ex-girlfriend used to say I'd forget my own head if it wasn't attached. She was right. I once left my entire ship at a space station and took a shuttle to the wrong planet. Didn't realize for 3 days. How are you still alive? Ixora asked, colors shifting to something that might have been morbid fascination. Honestly, I have no idea. But I am, and I know where the ship is. So do you want to go get it, or do you want to keep yelling at me? Because I'm cool with either. But I've got a lunch date with this really nice Kalthrani botanist in like 2 hours. Velkrin's eye stalks unknotted themselves as his tactical training overrode his existential confusion. You're absolutely certain you can find it again? Yeah, man. I wrote down the coordinates. Well, I voice recorded them. Well, I voice recorded them on my old phone, and then I transferred them to my new phone, so assuming I did that right. Yeah, totally certain. Assuming you did that right, Velkrin repeated. 90% certain, 80%. Look, we'll find it. I've got a good memory for space stuff. It's everything else I forget. Dr. Ixora floated directly in front of Jake, her form pulsing with determination. Captain Morrison, if you're lying about this, if this is some kind of human prank, I will personally ensure that you are banned from every research station, museum, and university in the known galaxy. Jake met her gaze, or would have, if she had eyes in the traditional sense. Doc, I'm not lying. I'm just a guy who found a cool ship and forgot to mention it for 15 years. It happens. It does not happen, Velkrin said. It happens to me, and I'm part of the galaxy. So technically, it happens in the galaxy. Checkmate. Jake grinned, clearly pleased with his logic. Velkrin made a decision that he knew he would either be remembered for as a genius or as the ambassador who trusted a human and doomed them all. Fine. We'll organize an expedition. But Captain Morrison, you're coming with us. And if this turns out to be a wild nebula chase, I'm holding you personally responsible. Fair enough. Can we stop for tacos on the way? I know a great place near the Kelvin Junction. We're not stopping for tacos. We should stop for tacos. No tacos. This is why nobody likes diplomatic missions. 3 days later, a fleet of 12 ships assembled at the coordinates Jake had provided, which he had indeed recorded on his phone. Though he had labeled them, "Cool space thing I found, don't forget this." The fleet consisted of representatives from 6 major civilizations, all of whom had been skeptical, desperate, or curious enough to believe the humans' insane story. Velkrin stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, watching the asteroid field slowly rotate in the viewport. Next to him, Jake was eating something he called a breakfast burrito, which seemed to be a taco's morning cousin. So it's definitely in there, Jake said, gesturing with the burrito. I remember those 2 asteroids that look like they're fighting. I call them Steve and Greg. You named the asteroids Steve and Greg, Velkrin said. Yeah, Steve is the one on the left. Greg is clearly the aggressor in their relationship. They're asteroids, Captain Morrison. They don't have relationships. Not. With that attitude, they don't. The fleet moved carefully into the asteroid field, navigating the complex gravitational eddies that had destroyed dozens of ships over the centuries. Jake finished his burrito and moved to the navigation console, his demeanor shifting from breakfast enthusiast to something that might have been competent pilot. Okay. So, if I remember right, and I probably do, we want to thread between Steve and Greg, then take a hard right at the big icy one that looks like my Uncle Frank, then straight on until we hit the clearing. That's where I left her. Against all odds and probability, Jake's directions were accurate. The fleet emerged into a clearing in the asteroid field, and there, exactly as described, was the wandering star. It was magnificent. Even after 12,000 years, even just sitting in space like an abandoned car, it radiated an aura of advanced technology and purposeful design. The hull was a seamless blend of curves and angles that shouldn't have worked together, but did. The progenitor script along its flanks glowed with a soft blue light, pulsing in patterns that might have been language, or might have been decoration, or might have been both. Every screen on every ship in the fleet lit up as sensors went haywire, trying to process what they were seeing. "Told you," Jake said. "Right where I left it. Didn't even get a parking ticket." Dr. Ixora's voice crackled over the communications channel, and Velkrin could hear actual tears in her voice, if Vexithari could cry. "It's real. It's actually real. Captain Morrison, I apologize for every bad thing I said about you. It's cool, Doc. You weren't wrong about most of it." The next hour was a flurry of activity as the various ships deployed scientific equipment, sent over boarding parties, and generally acted like children in a toy store. Velkrin watched as teams of researchers, archaeologists, and scientists from a dozen species swarmed over the wandering star, their excited chatter filling every communication frequency. Jake stood next to him, looking oddly peaceful. "You know," Velkrin said quietly, "you could have sold this information. The Kalthrani alone would have paid enough credits to buy a small moon. Instead, you just told us where it was." Jake shrugged. "It's not my ship, man. It's everyone's ship. Or it's the progenitor's ship, I guess. But they're not using it right now. Seemed wrong to keep it to myself. Plus, I figured you guys would get more out of it than me. I already flew it around. Got that out of my system." "You opened a wormhole to a progenitor facility and got it out of your system," Velkrin said. "I mean, what else was I going to do with it? Make it my personal yacht? I can barely remember to buy groceries. I'd definitely forget where I parked an ancient super ship if I actually had to use it regularly." Before Velkrin could respond, alarms blared across every ship. The wandering star's running lights had activated, flooding the clearing with brilliant blue-white light. The progenitor's script was glowing brighter, and the hull itself seemed to be awakening. "Ah," Jake said, which Velkrin had learned was human for "something bad is probably about to happen." A hologram appeared above the wandering star, massive and detailed. It was a progenitor, or at least what everyone assumed progenitors looked like. Tall, vaguely humanoid, with 4 arms and a head that seemed to be more energy than matter. When it spoke, the translation matrices in every ship worked overtime to convert its language. "Attention, unauthorized visitors," the progenitor said, its voice like cosmic wind chimes. "This vessel is protected property. You have violated 17 different quarantine protocols. Please explain your presence immediately, or defensive measures will be initiated." Every ship in the fleet went silent. Velkrin felt his cardiac nodes forget how to function. This was it. This was first contact with the progenitors, or at least their AI systems, and they were about to be vaporized for trespassing. Jake stepped forward and activated his comm system. "Hey, yeah, hi. This is Captain Jake Morrison. Human. I'm the one who parked it here 15 years ago after I accidentally flew through your wormhole thing. Remember? You sent me back and said something about waiting for authorization. Sorry about that. I got busy. But I brought some friends this time, and we were hoping to maybe talk about the ship. Everyone's really excited about it. We promise we won't press any weird buttons, mostly." The hologram turned to face Jake's ship. There was a long pause. A very long pause. The kind of pause that suggested massive computer systems were processing information they never expected to encounter. "You are the unauthorized visitor from incident reference 79840? The progenitor asked. "If that was 15 years ago, yeah, that's me. Is this a bad time? We can come back later if you're doing something important." Another pause. Then, impossibly, The hologram's face shifted into what might have been amusement. "You returned," it said. "Unauthorized visitors never return. They either flee or are destroyed by the security measures. You are the first to simply park the vessel and return with others. This is unexpected." "Yeah, well, humans are pretty good at unexpected. It's kind of our thing. So, are you going to vaporize us? Or can we talk about this like civilized beings?" The hologram seemed to consider this. "The wandering star has been dormant for 12,000 of your standard years. It was placed in this location as a test which, until now, no species has passed." "A test?" Velkrin managed to croak out. 12,000 years of galactic mystery was a test? "Yes. The progenitors required certainty that the species who would inherit our technology possessed not only the capability to find and use it, but the wisdom to share it and the honesty to seek permission." The hologram gestured toward Jake. This human displayed all three qualities. Poorly and with significant delays, but satisfactorily. "I passed a test," Jake said. "Me? Jake Morrison? The guy who once tried to microwave an egg and started a fire? The parameters were flexible. Your species shows promise." The hologram flickered. "The progenitors have been watching. We did not vanish. We evolved beyond physical form and now exist in a state your species cannot yet perceive. We left behind tests, keys, opportunities for those ready to join the greater galactic community beyond mere physical existence." Dr. Ixora's voice trembled across the comm. "So, the wandering star is a test. What happens now?" "Now, the ship and its knowledge are yours. All of you. Use it wisely. Study it well. When you are ready, when your civilizations have matured enough, return to the coordinates Captain Morrison visited. The next stage awaits." The hologram began to fade. "We will be watching. And Captain Morrison, please label your buttons in the future. The incident with the wormhole generator was recorded as highly concerning." "Yeah, sorry about that," Jake said. "In my defense, the button was really shiny." The hologram disappeared. The wandering star's lights dimmed to their previous state. Across the fleet, beings from a dozen species sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Velkrin turned to Jake, his eye stalks focusing with new intensity. "You saved us all. If you hadn't been honest, if you'd tried to keep the ship for yourself or sell the information, we might have failed the test." "Nah, man. I just did what made sense. Plus, like I said, I'd definitely lose track of a ship that important. I once lost my own ship for 3 days. This was safer." Jake grinned. "Though I gotta say, it's pretty cool that my ADHD and general spaciness technically saved the galaxy from failing a 12,000-year-old test." "Only humans," Ixora said, her voice mixing laughter and disbelief, "could accidentally pass a civilization-defining test by forgetting about it for 15 years. We're a special species." Jake agreed. "Now, can we get some tacos? Saving the galaxy makes me hungry." As the fleet began organizing the most important research project in galactic history, Velkrin found himself laughing. Actually laughing, something his species did rarely and only in moments of either supreme joy or complete mental breakdown. He wasn't entirely sure which this was. "Captain Morrison," he said, "remind me to never, ever doubt humans again." "Will do. But you'll probably forget. Then I'll do something else weird, and we'll have this conversation again. It's kind of our thing." Jake patted him on what might have been a shoulder. "By the way, do you think the progenitors have tacos where they are? In their higher plane of existence?" "I have no idea." "That's the real question we should be answering. Forget the technology. Are there tacos in the ascended realm? Because if not, I'm not sure I want to evolve beyond physical form. Velkrin looked at the wandering star, at the fleet of ships, at the human who had somehow managed to accidentally solve the greatest mystery in galactic history by being exactly who he was. Forgetful, honest, hungry, and utterly, impossibly human. You know what, Captain Morrison? Let's go get those tacos. Now you're talking my language. And so, while the greatest archaeological discovery in 12,000 years sat waiting to revolutionize galactic civilization, two beings from very different worlds went to find a good taco stand. Because some things, Velkrin was learning, were universal. The search for knowledge, the drive to explore, and the understanding that sometimes, after accidentally saving the galaxy, you really just needed a good meal and someone to share it with. The wandering star gleamed in the asteroid field, its secrets ready to be unraveled. But that could wait until after lunch. After all, it had been patient for 12,000 years. It could wait a few more hours. Somewhere in a higher dimension, a being made of pure energy that had once been a progenitor looked down at the scene and made a notation in a file that existed beyond normal space-time. The file was labeled Humanity, Probable Chaos, Definite Potential. Under it, a single line was added. They passed. Begin Stage 2 preparations. And someone research what a taco is. It seems important. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, continued spinning. Somewhere, someone pressed a button they shouldn't have. Somewhere else, another human forgot where they parked something important. And somewhere in the vast machinery of cosmic evolution, the progenitors watched and waited, probably laughing their higher dimensional energy forms off. Because if there was one thing the universe had taught them in their millions of years of existence, it was this. Never underestimate the species that treats existential challenges like minor inconveniences and considers lunch breaks sacred. Those were the species that went places, even if they sometimes forgot where they parked.